Dr. Karin. And Dr. Karin she knows about all things dating, and she's just so fabulous. And I'm so happy to have you here today. I feel like this is a great time to talk because now that the Chicago's opening up on Friday, I feel like dating is going to be coming back big time. And so good to maybe get some tips and tricks in here that people can utilize as they get back out into the world. Is that what you've been finding?
Oh yeah, Shelly. First of all, thanks so much for inviting me to join you. This is so great to have the chance to just talk about these issues because yeah, I mean, dating is dicey anyway. And now we're dating post-pandemic and people have been cooped up and like, it's on, right? Like they're going to be so excited to get back out. So yeah, I think there's actually some really great lessons and teaching points that we learned during the pandemic that I think we can roll into our post-pandemic dating and loving and living and yeah, all the things. So I'm glad to talk with you about them.
Yes, absolutely. And so, yeah, let's talk. Okay. So yeah, we're trying to hack dating now. That's what we're trying to do today. And so a lot of things, and I've heard this from friends and even family members, a lot of things shifted during the pandemic to digital and you couldn't really meet people. And so what are you hearing and finding as things are now opening back up? What are people doing and how do you suggest handling dates now?
Yeah, so the people in my community, of course, like so many of us were feeling very alienated and isolated during the pandemic. And so that's just a major concern that so many people were wrestling with. And so to address that, and so people who were on the dating scene, like, oh my gosh, it's hard enough to meet someone and now I can't leave my house, right? So they had to get creative, but I've heard some great stuff about that actually, Shelly, which makes me so happy to know that some people were able to get creative and even find like a silver lining, right? Because when we go through something horrific, like global pandemic, and there's so much grief and there's so much loss and pain, we also look for a silver lining. And one of the ones is really integrating into your dating process, that step of after the texting or the DMing, and then maybe a phone call, which I don't know, this isn't as popular as it used to be, but after that, before even meeting IRL, maybe consider doing a video date, which was kind of mandatory, right? It was kind of the only way that people were dating for a time. Mm-hmm. But now maybe that's a nice way because you can have like a 20 minutes, half hour video chat and gather a lot of information. Instead of maybe dedicating an entire Friday evening, you might find out in that 20 minutes it's not a fit. So it's kind of another option for figuring out if this is a good fit for you. And then if not, you didn't dedicate the entire Friday night. Friday night's still open.
So when I was in the dating world, that is one thing I remember is that I had a handful of times where I committed right to like a Friday or a Saturday. And I was like, I could have figured out I don't like you in about 30 seconds. And then my whole life and so then I did switch over to the let's maybe chat on the phone. Like if I were to meet them on an app. And that was like, when I would tell people that, some people were like, what? Like that, they thought it was weird. But I think that I found it to be super helpful. And so I hear what you're saying. So you're saying that now, we are forced to do that for the last year. And so maybe it's a good idea for people to kind of continue that as an extra vetting step, maybe.
Yeah.
That's maybe not so weird anymore.
Right. To parlay that pandemic dating and into the post-pandemic dating process and try to pull any of those processes that were working well because we had to use them. Maybe they could also be integrated into post-pandemic dating so that, like you said, you can figure out pretty quickly, oftentimes, not always, but sometimes you can within the first couple of minutes of meeting someone if there's kind of that chemistry or the potential for that chemistry even. And keep Friday night open for someone with whom you might have that chemistry.
Absolutely. And so by the way, I want to make sure that people know if you're watching, if you have any questions about dating or if you've had some crazy dating thing happen and you want to let Dr. Karin know and you want to ask us, feel free to hop on live with us and we'll include you and you can ask your question to Dr. Karin live. But what other things are you hearing from clients and people who you talk to now that things are revving up again? Like, what would you say are like the top 2 concerns of people and questions that they have for you?
Yeah, I think the top 2 concerns I actually heard because I pulled my community too. I heard one is that how can we pace ourselves? We're so excited, right, to finally be IRL again. And I think that's, again, something that we can learn from the slower pace of the pandemic dating. And that's something, again, that ended up being initially very scary for my community. Like, how am I even going to meet anyone? And then realizing, okay, we are still meeting, and we're able to do more of that connection, the talking, the getting to know each other on the friendship level, because there was that distance that was necessary. Even people who were meeting up during the pandemic, taking walks, keeping a social distance, maybe going out to a nature trail or something because they didn't want to be inside. Obviously, so many places were closed anyway. So trying to, again, embrace that slower pace that helps you really set the foundation of a relationship. So one of the members of my community, like I said, is a little nervous that with all this pent up energy, right? Like I'm waxing backs and I'm ready to go, right? Like there's gonna be concern that like, how do I keep myself at an appropriate pace, because we're so excited to finally get to have a semblance of that normalcy back that we've been missing for so long. So my recommendation is you got to keep your head in the game, Shelly. That's what I always tell my community. You know, I talk about in my IGTVs, I talk about love smarter, not harder. And yes, we want to fully get excited about the potential to meet someone. And when we first meet someone, we do get excited about them. We start kind of like thinking about them a lot, maybe obsessing about them. And that's okay. And that's normal. That's part of the fun of falling for someone. We got to keep our head in the game. And keeping our head in the game helps us remember that, okay, even though I'm excited because I've been cooped up for a year and a half, even though I'm back out in the scene, I still want to be smart about my approach to the process of dating. I want to incrementally share who I am. I don't give anyone access to me too soon. And that's not just like the physical access, but even your mental headspace, right? And even your time. You don't just like roll open your schedule like, oh, sure, let's hang out all the time. We want to be wise. We want to be savvy. We want to keep our head in the game.
That's great. Yeah, that's great advice. And so, like you said, what do people say? Like hot Zach summer, or yeah, like vaxxed and waxed, or whatever you said. So
yeah, it's so funny.
And so I know that some people are wrestling with if they are vaccinated or if they're not. Is this something? Do you suggest people talk about this when they date? Is this something that they should put on their dating apps? What advice do you have when it comes to that?
You know, someone just, again, another member of my community just this morning slid into my DMs with a question about that. She's dating someone and she's really upset because he doesn't want to get vaccinated, and she is getting vaccinated and she's upset about that. She's like, I'm really in love with this guy, but I don't know if it's going to work. So Shelly, it's interesting. We're in a new era of people making values-based decisions, right? So for some people, they're like, you have to do this. It's a personal responsibility for yourself, your family, for the community. Other people are like, hey, it's experimental still. And I prefer to kind of wait and see it. I've assessed my own personal health risks as I understand it, and I'm going to make the choice not to. So it's a value-laden decision. People are putting it on their profile, though, like you said. So some people are just like being very upfront about that. And I guess, to my mind, we take that information the same way we take other bits of information, right? That might show up on a profile. And some people could be like, I could work with that. If they want to get vaxxed and I don't, or if I want to get vaxxed and they don't, I could work with it. And other people, like this woman who was reaching out to me this morning, like it's really bothering her. She's seeing that as an obstacle in their relationship. So Shelly, I think it's just something that's going to be a bit of information. Like some people might say such and such job, and I don't want to date someone with a job like that because maybe he'd be on call all the time and it would interrupt my lifestyle that I'm choosing to have. Or he'd be a first responder and it would freak me out that he'd be in harm's way a lot. People may make decisions about other aspects of someone. And I think we need to integrate this. And I hope we can do that in a loving, respectful way, because it has been kind of a hot topic where people get really animated. And I want us to not lose our just respect for other people, where they're coming from and the value that they are choosing to live their lives by. And I hope we can be respectful in dating as well.
It's such a good point, because yeah, I didn't really think about that it is going to kind of present like this new wave of like, right, kind of maybe assessing your own values and looking at the values of others. So it sounds like you're saying to kind of, just like anything else, understand what you want and what's important to you, and then kind of enter the dating apps that way, knowing that information. And then you kind of have a better idea of what you're looking for and what you're willing to accept or not, right? Kind of like anything else, like you're saying.
Yeah, I really hope we can see it as just other life choices, lifestyle decisions, ways of living, ways of doing life that we can, like you said, the values and I encourage my community all the time. during our single season to spend time, and dating helps us discern our values, right? Because sometimes we go, well, that didn't work for me. I never knew that was going to be a thing, but it was a thing.
Mm.
Or someone's life choices and something you go, wow, we didn't click. And one of the reasons is because his choice or her choice was different from mine in terms of this value issue. And I encourage anyone, whether you're on the dating scene or just taking some time off the dating scene or whatever your stance is, you're going to understand your own responses to life in general, certainly to how people present themselves in the dating scene, certainly to how to better understand why a relationship didn't work so that you can point yourself in a direction towards someone who you can find success and love and happiness with. And really a lot of that has to do with that values clarification work that we can do.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And so, in terms of like, right, starting to get back out into the city, have you talked to people who, because I know some people who, COVID was hard for them because they were single and just being by themselves a lot. And then, okay, now the city's reopening and there's like a lot of nerves there to get back out and to get back on the apps. What advice do you have for those people?
Yeah, you're going to have some of that. Some people, maybe people who are a little bit more shy in general,
Mhm.
the whole experience of being locked down was for them maybe in some ways like, okay, whoo, I don't have to push myself to go out and meet you. But like in a way, it maybe felt a bit comfortable for some of those folks who maybe are on the shyer side. So I would encourage them to think about, again, the values comes to mind here. Yes, if we want love and partnership, and dating is the vehicle to find love and partnership, we may have to kind of dig deep and push ourselves a bit to push through those butterflies and those nerves of getting back out in those wide open spaces and those social contexts. We may have to push ourselves a little bit. And one of the therapeutic modalities that I love is called acceptance and commitment therapy by Dr. Stephen C. Hayes. And it's all rooted in values. And what a therapist in this context would try to coach a client to do is to remember that, yes, sometimes we have to push ourselves through uncomfortable, awkward moments, elements, time periods, because at the other side of that is that value that we really want to live our life pointed toward that direction or that goal that we really want to achieve. So I have a podcast, and you've been on my podcast. My podcast is called Love and Life with Dr. Karin with an I, Karin. And I have an episode with Dr. Ellen Hendrickson, who's an expert in social anxiety. And she shares all these strategies and techniques that can help someone who may find that, wow, there was a part of being cooped up at home that worked for me because I'm not the most social butterfly out there, right? So they could use some of these strategies to really help themselves gird up and get the strength to get back out there. Because again, if they're looking for love and partnership, we do have to, in a sense, we got to give ourselves that little shove.
Absolutely. Yes. And your podcast is awesome, by the way. So I suggest everybody check it out. Why don't you just plug it one more time, just in case of you, because you have so many awesome guests and I find them to be super relatable and you talk about a lot of things that I think a lot of people are dealing with. So definitely go ahead and plug it again.
Oh, thanks so much, Shelly. Yeah, it's called Love and Life with Dr. Karin. And really it's a lot of conversations. Certainly I focus on dating, relationships, marriage, parenting, all the kind of relationship stuff is what my community really is enjoying. But I also bring up other kind of content areas. So we talk about the conversations about just mental health in general or therapy in general. I try to get therapists, psychologists on. And so I was a former professor for years. So all of the conversations, I sneak in a little research, I keep it fun. It's not like a boring college lecture.
No, it's very fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what it's about. Yeah. Thanks for letting me share about that.
Yeah, of course. Okay. So let's say, some people have kind of been going back on dates and then they find themselves, you talked about a little bit about this earlier, and they're like on a roll and they're dating and things are going fast. And then they realize like, okay, I'm really overwhelmed. How do you suggest maybe pumping the brakes, or is there a way, or is it too far gone, or what can people do?
Yeah, well, we talk about in the dating community, we talk about love bombing, and that's kind of something that can happen, like you're talking about right there, Shelly, is that if we don't pump the brakes, and I'm always encouraging women in my community, because they're mostly women, but the men too, because they reach out as well, but that we got to be careful. I'm sorry, my dog has got a squeaker toy. So if you hear that. Sorry, I don't know why he decided to come in here right now.
Oh, that's so cute. No problem.
Okay. Yeah, luckily it's alive. It's a little bit more low key, but yeah. So one of the things we have to do is to make sure that we're pacing ourselves, even when we get excited about somebody. And because really, like I was saying earlier about that access to ourselves, that when we're just getting to know someone, we incrementally share who we are, including our time, including our heart, including our headspace. And we want to do that in incremental little bits here and there so that we can see that we can truly feel comfortable and that they can earn our trust. And it's not that we're trying to hold back and be like, prove to me that you're a good person. No, it's not that. It's just a normal pacing, because otherwise, like you were alluding to a minute ago, what can happen is that we get excited, especially after, the post-pandemic, it's on, we get excited and we get ahead of our skis, we get in over our head. And then sometimes that flame that's starting to ignite can fizzle out just as quickly. And that love bombing, I hear a lot of the women in my community complaining about that. And because we can't control what anyone else does, I'm always trying to encourage them, hey, okay, we can't control what someone else does, but we can control how much access we allow someone to have to us, to our time, to our head, to our heart.
Well, and I think too, I wonder, because I've been in that situation, and I think too, at the time it was like, well, it's going fast, but let's just give it a shot, because what do I have to lose? But then thinking back, it's like, if I'd slowed it down, I would have had nothing to lose either, because we would have just gotten to know each other, and we would have just, it could have been a better result maybe. So is that kind of what you would suggest then also, is just kind of like taking a step back and like pulling away a little bit maybe?
Yeah. And I think that's a really important point, because I really believe that when you meet the right person, it's going to work out. So I know what some people could say. They could argue, well, we got nothing to lose. If we're just going to be head over heels within 3 days, then that's us and that's our path. And sometimes that happens for people. But more often, unfortunately, I see that people feel like, dang, if I kind of just kept my wits about me, even if it fizzled out, I wouldn't be so devastated, right? So I didn't turn over so much energy, so much of myself to this person. They got so much of me that now I'm really crushed. I'm really heartbroken. And the other thing I'd have people keep in mind, Shelly, which I think is really important, and this is going to be a temptation, right? Because we're just like boom, we've been cooped up, we're out. It's summertime. And the problem could be, if I'm dating and someone is really into me right away, I need to be suspect, don't I? Because it may not be me. It may feel flattering that he's so into me after 2 dates, but how much does he really know about me right now? So I want to be cautious that this person isn't just in love with the idea of falling in love with someone and having a hot girl summer, right? I want this person to really want me. And if they're coming on too strong, too soon, it's probably not about me. It's probably just about the idea of getting into a relationship and having that summer romance that he's looking for.
Right. Or maybe the idea of you, right? Like maybe there's things that he thinks he knows. Right. No, I totally, yeah. Go ahead. Were you going to say something else? I didn't want to cut you off.
No, you didn't at all. I was just completely agree, because I love that notion. And I talk about that as well. The idea of you, because what happens, and we do it and they do it, and it's very normal, but we have to be careful. And that's why I always talk about keeping our head in the game, because when we start to fall for someone, we can kind of take off our reality glasses and put on our rose colored glasses, right? So we see the person in terms of who we'd like this person to be, who we hope this person is going to be. And we start assuming, oh, well, he was nice to the dog, so I guess he's going to love cats and children and all these other, yeah, right. It's like we start projecting onto this person, not who they're actually showing us who they are, but who we hope that they're going to be. And that can be a really dicey situation, because we can fall in love again with the idea of this person, or they can fall in love with the idea of us. And then even if it doesn't work out, we're really not even heartbroken about this person, but again, this potential that we had concocted in our head that may not be grounded in reality.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad we're talking about it, because I feel, like the city's opening up on Friday. Like I'm sure, again, it's going to be just the Wild West. And so people, right, if I could see a lot of people maybe getting into that situation where it's like, let's just do this, and getting into it really fast. But if you are looking for something serious, I think you offer some really good advice. So I think that's really good. And then also too, a point you brought up, and this is something it took me a long time to learn, that to not always listen to what people say, but to watch their actions and to see what they do. Is that something you would say to look out for too?
Oh, for sure. I love that you bring that up. It's definitely something that I'm always encouraging those in my community to remember that dating is about gathering information. And as much as we love this whirlwind romance idea of just falling head over heels so quickly, we don't have enough information. And we want to make sure, getting back to the values conversation, that when we are gathering the information, we are doing that, keeping our head in the game so that we can go, okay, as much as this part of this person really gels with me, there's this really key core value that we part ways on. And so I gotta be really smart about this instead of, again, falling for the potential and maybe he'll change and all of that sort of thing. We want to make sure that we're just taking our time and really processing and being cognizant of what we're experiencing and not projecting onto that person and not trying to make them someone that they are not showing themselves to be. So this gathering information piece is critical.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, just like you were saying earlier, that takes time, right? I mean, unfortunately. So
No.
people just have to take the time. So is there anything else that you want to cover that we missed or that you think people should know as we head into this post-pandemic dating world?
Yeah, no, again, and I thanks for the opportunity to share with your community, because really it is the idea of taking the best lessons that we learned from the pandemic and parlaying them into our post-pandemic dating process, which again, maybe take that extra step to have a couple video dates. That's a really great idea. Like you said, another level of the vetting process. Also take this time, whatever information we're going to get about the vaccine and the ones who aren't vaccinated, take time to look at that information and maybe take a moment again right before, if we're opening up on Friday, like let's take some time to really get clear what that means for you, so that when because the conversation is going to come up, and we know, dating or not, this conversation is happening. People are asking questions that we didn't usually ask those kinds of questions, but because we've all lived through this pandemic, it's just so much on the forefront of our minds. So maybe take some time to clarify for yourself what that means for you and your stance on it, and whether it's something that you can there's wiggle room there, or whether that's going to be something you're like, no, I don't think that's for me. And like you were mentioning, that's just going to be like many other elements of someone's personality and their value set that we interact with, and then make decisions about whether or not it's a fit for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you always have so many great tidbits and like you said, so many great podcast guests. So why don't you just sort of shout out your social really quick so people can follow you if they want to get some more hacks from you.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Shelly. Yeah. So at the end of every podcast episode, again, my podcast is called Love and Life with Dr. Karin. That's Karin. And yeah, at the end, I always do a love and life hack. I love the idea of these little tidbits of information that we can tuck away to try to level up in love and dating and life and all the things. And then on Instagram is where I'm most busy. I'm on Facebook at Dr. Karin Anderson Abril. And then on Instagram, I'm most busy there, which is Dr. Karin, and again, Karin. So I'd love to connect with anyone who would love to, some love and life hacks coming their way from me.
Awesome. Well, and thank you so much to everybody who tuned in. And again, if you're maybe like too shy to ask a question on here, you can reach out to Dr. Karin. And you can always find me too on my social. I'm at Showbiz Shelly. But thanks, Dr. Karin. This was so great.
Thank you, Shelly. It was a lot of fun. Take care.
Bye. You too.